Rugby World Rankings, folks. After 2 weeks of November internationals, there were a heck of a lot of games on. There's a heck of a lot of changes to the Rugby World Rankings. We'll go through them. What were the changes for the round that was? What are the upcoming possibilities for this third round of November internationals? And what are the possible implications for the Rugby World Cup draw? You guys can let us know your thoughts on how fair or not you reckon the rankings are. The main theme of this week's rankings, there's a heap of points exchanged. Like, I've got the different colors. Green teams went up in points, red went down, and the blue teams stayed the same. But nobody really changed positions, at least in the top kind of couple of tiers of the world rankings. So there's changes to the points, but not really changes to the positions. I'm talking about things like the South Africans. With their win over France, they extended their lead at the top of the world rankings. They're up to 93.06, taking not quite a full point off the French, but it's a decent amount given that the higher you get in the world rankings, the harder it becomes to take points off other teams, because once there's 10 points between you and another team, generally you're not going to take points off them. So South Africa on 93, basically playing anybody outside the top 6 is, apart from like playing Australia away maybe, is not really going to take any points. So the games where you can take points become fewer and fewer, but taking almost a full point off the French extends their lead. As I said, it's not quite the highest they've ever been under Russie. He's had them up to like 94 point something in the past, but they are the only side up at 93 for sure. The All Blacks also went up, didn't take quite as many points off the Scots. They took, 0.36? They would have taken more if they'd won by a bigger margin, but they'll just be happy to get the win. So it does feel like with these two sides both in the 90s, that's the only two sides in the 90s, it's kind of a clear number 1 and clear number 2 in the world, but there's almost 2 points between these two sides, so it's really a distinct 1 and 2 at the moment. Then there's a little bit of a chasing pack. Ireland didn't take any points off the Japanese. Again, it's because the gap between the sides is too big. And then there's England, who are on quite a winning streak, who are that kind of challenging side, potentially for that third spot. The battle between Ireland and England in terms of their world rankings, and then next year's Six Nations, you feel like is going to be quite a tasty one. Obviously, England have got New Zealand next, so that's a chance for them to make a statement. England did take points off Fiji, but very, very little, 0.02. The margin is just so great between the two sides. Remember, England would have been scored at +3 for being at home. So, yeah, minimal pointage taken for the English, but it has still got them in green. France, the only side in the top 6 that lost points. They're in red, losing that 0.86 to the Springboks. It's a hard one to gauge with the French, because there's a lot of people who are saying, they should be the third side in the world, they should be second or whatever. Or they lost at home to the number 1 side, despite that number 1 side having a red card, and they lost pretty handily. We'll see how they bounce back against Fiji, but I don't think it's really enough to put their top seeding at the next World Cup in jeopardy, unless they would have to lose next week to Fiji and start really shedding points, I think, for that to be a threat. Because if somehow you're unaware, I've been talking about it every week, it feels like, for a long time now, but the seedings at the next World Cup are in these groups of 6. So the top 6 sides will be your top seeds. So if you're in 1 to 6, you will not play the other sides in 1 to 6. So the Boks can't play the All Blacks in pool play. The English won't play the French, that kind of thing. So getting in the top 6 is important. I don't think France can drop out of there. I don't think they will. Argentina's in a slightly more precarious position, although they did give themselves a bit of a bolstering by beating Wales pretty handily. They took, 0.48? So moving themselves away from the chasing pack of the Wallabies, the Scots, the Fijians, but they are not quite out of the woods just yet. But they'll desperately want to hang on to that 6th spot so they can play Tier 2 and Tier 3 sides in their pool, and they'd want to top their pool being a top 6 side. For the Wallabies, it's a bit of a setback for them losing to Italy in terms of that chase for the top 6. It means they've fallen further behind the Argentinians. The Aussies lost 1.21. So pretty brutal result for them. They seem pretty tired. They still are in the race, but they need other results to go their way. And likewise, the Scots losing 0.36, combined with their July loss to Fiji, has really put their chances of a top 6 spot a bit further out of their grasp. And then Fiji, as I said, lost points to England, but so kind of few that it doesn't really change things that much for them. Outside those sides, Georgia did beat US, didn't take any points from them. I forgot Italy. Italy with that win over the Australians kind of keeps them pretty safely mid into the second tier. And then the other one that's in a precarious position is Wales. Wales with that loss to Argentina at home are awfully close to Japan. And who's Wales got next? And look at where they are on the table, like in terms of the rankings. 12th and 13th is going to be a massive difference, maybe even more so than 6th and 7th, because if you're in these third seeds, if you're between 13th and 18th, you're guaranteed to play at least one of these sides and one of these sides. So you could get like the Springboks in Scotland. You could get the All Blacks and Wallabies, just depending on how the draw goes. Whereas if you're in the second seed, you're going to get a USA or a Samoa or Uruguay. I mean, some of those prospects sound easier or harder than others, but you'd much rather be a second seed than a third seed. So Japan and Wales have got a pretty much direct battle out for that one this coming weekend. As I said, Japan didn't lose any points. Spain is still steady as she goes, but Uruguay is the big mover on the board, going up a whopping 4 spots with their big win over Portugal away from home. They've passed the USA, Samoa, Chile, and Tonga to leap up onto the whiteboard. Like, Samoa did get a win in that repechage competition. They beat Brazil pretty handily, but didn't take any points. Elsewhere, Belgium managed to get a win over Namibia to put their hand up for that final spot at the World Cup, but that competition still goes on. So what's going to happen this third week of November internationals? Well, South Africa playing Italy. They can't take any points, again, because they're too far away from them. Even if Italy is scored at +3 for being at home, that's going to put them on, 81? 93. So that's what I mean about it gets harder to take points off opposition the higher you get up the rankings. The All Blacks are taking on England. That's a big one. Both sides can take at least a point off each other. That would certainly be a setback to Razors, guys. But again, realistically, it's not going to be a battle for the world ranking seedings, because both these sides, I feel like England and New Zealand, are pretty secure. You've got Wales up against Japan, like I mentioned, which is a direct matchup for that world ranking spot, because if Wales drop into 13th with a loss to Japan, then they're relying on their fact that they can beat the All Blacks or South Africa to get more points. So you feel like this is the week to get it done. So a high pressure match, but neither side comes into this one on exactly a great run. Remember, Japan and Wales went 1-1 when Wales toured Japan earlier in the year. Ireland can't take any points off the Aussies, but the Aussies would love a couple of points off the Irish if they could get a win. That would put them back in the race for 6th spot. And if the Scots could do them a favour by beating Argentina, the Wallabies could potentially sneak into that 6th spot. It seems like a far cry, because 84, 81, but I mean, if the Pumas drop a point, the Wallabies grab a couple of points, it's pretty much a swap between the sides, but we'll see. The Scots can't quite pass the Argentinians, but they can certainly take some major pointage. Scotland need to win this one to keep any hopes of a top 6 spot alive, whereas the Argentinians, if they can beat the Scots, I feel like will more or less have it wrapped up for that top 6. So again, it's a pretty massive one. Elsewhere, Belgium is taking on Brazil, Samoa taking on Namibia. You feel like it's going to come down to Samoa and Belgium for that final spot at the World Cup. I forgot to mention Fiji is also taking on France. Fiji is also in the race for 6th. Argentina lose, Fiji beat France. It's still possible Fiji leapfrogs into 6th, but we are starting to look at less and less likely things, but who knows? Rugby is a funny game. You guys let us know your thoughts on the rankings. How fair or not do you think they are? Do you see Wales hanging on to 12th? Argentina hanging on to 6th? You guys let us know your thoughts. Take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.